I'm going to have to make a video apology on YouTube.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 495. I'm Ozone Ocean and with me is Tance, Baines and Pitt. Hi guys.
Hi guys.
Hello.
Hello.
I was waiting to see because Baines last week was saying, I say hi in the order you introduce us, but
I try to.
you sort of because I put you in the middle there, but yeah.
That's the hardest position. I was wondering if you did that on purpose.
But Tance and Pitt mixed it up. So this week we're chatting about...
They're always plotting against me, those two.
Oh, they are. It's incredible.
It's our cunning plan.
The evil sisters.
I'm only happy if Baines is crying.
Aren't we all? So this week we're talking about fan fiction and the reasons why you should do it. Like, fan fiction is good and it can also be bad, but it depends on so many factors. Fan fiction is a big area of stuff. So we're gonna forge into this massive topic and ship each other and do all the things that you do in fan fiction. Oh Jesus, I hate that term. Anyway, before we get into that, it's got to do the feature, and I featured a comic this week, I think. Was it me that featured a comic?
Just take the credit. It doesn't matter.
All right.
I'll find out in a moment.
Yes, you will find out. You will find out. Okay, I will say that I featured a comic called Era of Iridor, or Era of Iridore. So, I will be telling you about that now. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Era of Idore, or Iridor, I'm not sure. Cassia recounts the traumatic experiences from her childhood that resulted in her meeting with the mysterious and elusive dragon nymphs, a secretive people about who not much is known for sure, but there are plenty of rumors circulating. How much of them are true? Well, Cassia is coming back to her childhood saviors as an advisor to an expedition that aims to find out exactly that. This is a fantasy story with steampunk elements. It's beautifully drawn with watercolors, so it has a very lovely, natural, textured look. So this is a really nice looking fantasy, especially if you like the look of watercolors as opposed to very smooth, flat looking digital art. So you're getting the real thing here. Anyway, it looks really nice. And there are not that many pages up, so you can really get into the feel of the story without having to read through a massive backlog of pages, which is always good. So, have a read of Era of Iridor. And it is by Deno85, and it's rated M for mature. And that was the featured comic, Era of Iridor. Iridore, I'm not sure of the pronunciation, but it is a word, Iridor. Okay, next up we have the theme to Bell Star, which is a nice comic by Jeff Salty, and it's rated T. Gumwell's already done a theme to Bell Star, so this is the second theme he's done, and he calls this the end credits theme, which is interesting. So that's his sort of rationale for the theme number 2 for Bell Star. It would be playing over the end credits. So, this is Relaxed Rockets. Lift off into this end credits theme for Bellstar. Gunwallis has already done a main thing. So this will be the coda for that great comic. This is a cool, relaxing, chill-out piece. Cafe Del Mar meets NASA. So, enjoy. Bellstar end credits.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Was the featured music. Thank you very much for that, Gunwallis. The end credits theme to Bell's Star, which is a very Barbarella-like comic. Okay, so fan fiction. Fan fiction has a real reputation these days, and deservedly so, because some of it is, people use their freedom in fan fiction to explore and do some silly things, which is fine. And
let me put it into perspective like this. There's almost 8 billion people on this planet, and the vast majority of them, at least who have internet access, you don't even need internet access just to make it, have the ability to make fan fiction. So there's any number of things you can expect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the multiplicity of the human universe here, that everything has, has happened. That's a good point. Yeah, you can expect all sorts of stuff, and you will see it if you've seen fan fiction. Sexy, shipping, my god, that phrase came to exist because of fan fiction. Came into our lexicon, and we are burdened with the term shipping, which means relationshipping. Basically, you're creating relationships between characters that you would want to see together that the author would never even consider having together. But, fans want to do this, and they see relationships occurring between characters. Maybe just a normal friendship between two characters, but the fans think, oh god, I wonder what would happen if those two were in a sexual liaison together. I want to see this. The author will never do it, so it's down to me. It's my responsibility to the world to show them. What's that, Tuds?
It has to happen.
It has to happen, and I will be the conduit through which this thing can come to be. I will create the story.
And we were not telling you is we were all just basically in agreement just now. Well, Oz hasn't said so yet, but I said that I said, I'll be honest, I want people to make fan fiction of my comics, good and bad. I want to see what happens. And Tanya and Baines both agreed that they want that as well. Hint, hint to everybody out there. But, I mean, there's something about it. At least...
Yes. Mm-hmm. Go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, at least from our standpoint, I am, at least from our standpoint as creators, but I get, and not all creators think like that. There are some creators who are staunchly against fan fictions of their work, but when it comes to us, you can rest assured that you can make all sorts of smut, or I guess whatever, doesn't have to be smut, but please make some smut on my work.
Well, I'm a little worried about smut because my casts, there are a lot of underage people in my casts, but
That's true.
but make whatever you want, guys. It would be an honor for me because it means that the setting I have created has inspired people to write within it, and I would love to see what there is. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially for my fantasy. Like my fantasy world is so vast. Exist in it, people.
Immerse.
Exist in it.
Yes.
Well, it's a fun thing, and it complements the creators in a lot of ways. It's the sincerest form of flattery, as they say.
Yeah.
A lot of creators, like real professional creators, don't like fan works traditionally of their stuff, and the reason for this was IP. If you dilute the IP or you have too much control over it, then it messes with what they're doing. And if they're trying to sell that work, get movie deals and TV series and all this kind of stuff, and there's this fan work out there, it can mess it up, mess up their negotiations. But say your fan work resembles what they're going to do in an upcoming story, then there's like legal issues and stuff like that. They can't there can't be any like possibility that you can claim ownership of work that they've done. So there's that as a problem. So that's why a lot of authors, send out cease and desist letters to people who do fan works because of that kind of stuff. They don't want to be sued and have their creation taken away from them because, you claim that they're copying your work. Go on, Tons.
The thing is, and when you write fan fiction, that's something that comes with the territory, and you have to keep in mind that unless you can actually prove chain of command in the sense that you can actually prove that the author came into contact with your work and knew your work and then took your work, which is work, by the way, using their original characters. It's not just an original story. It's going to be extremely hard to prove a thing. So I think that when you write fan fiction, you know that in essence you are not really owning the work, even if the story is original. If someone wants to poach it, for the particular fandom, they very easily can. So I would say that if people are making fan fiction of your work, it's a testament to the popularity of it, and I think it would be more of an asset than a drawback in the sense of that.
These days people are a lot more accepting of it. I think it was a few years ago when it wasn't such an accepted thing. These days I think creators embrace it, not just because it's like a compliment. They embrace it because it means viral
exposure.
Viral exposure, yeah. It means word of your stuff is spread from, mouth to mouth or whatever, whatever, it's spread. It makes it more popular, and this helps you sell your work. So it's a good thing. But there was a time in the 80s and the 70s and into the 90s even where it was policed a lot more harshly. So yeah, things have changed a lot. And there's also these days there's a massive fan story community, fan fiction community. I keep on messing up that. Fan fiction communities online where, people congregate and post their stuff. So that has become a much bigger thing than it ever used to be, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
of course, we have fan fiction creators writing Star Wars.
And actually, they might be the ones that keep Star Wars alive for now, because I have heard, or I have, because I don't read the Star Wars fan fiction. I haven't read for like a couple of decades, but in YouTube videos where they say how the Disney trilogy could have been corrected, quote unquote, to be a more structurally sound story or a more enticing story or what have you. I have heard at least 3 or 4 different versions that are all awesome. And it allows people to escape into this alternate storyline that will keep the love for the IP going, even though there was this massive blow that the particular brand took. So you have fan fiction for that to thank.
Well, mainly I was saying that the official Star Wars is created by fan fiction writers now. Poor ones.
Well, yeah.
But that's a particular point of view.
In a way, you could argue, I guess, if you wanted to be very distinguished and philosophical and deep, that every story is a fan fiction of some other story, just disguised with new characters, because every story has been told, and most plot lines are there, and a lot of characters can be overlapping in certain characteristics and stuff. So everyone is writing fan fictions. How well it's marketed, I guess, as original.
Yeah, because we do that, don't we? When we say fan fiction, we're kind of assuming there's this lack of professional quality, and that's not always fair.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we base it on the idea of the poor fan fiction, where people use it as an excuse to insert themselves and do the Mary Sues and all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't characterize all fan fiction in any way. There's professional stuff that runs the gamut, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's professional writers out there. There's people who write quality stuff. I mean, just like, there's so-called professional writers out there, and professional meaning published, in this sense, that suck, but I guess I'm trying to keep myself from going off on all these stupid little tangents that don't amount to nothing but anything. But I guess what I'm saying is when we talk about fan fiction, we tend to imagine it's, some 13-year-old sitting behind their computer desk after school. It's just fulfilling, indulging a fantasy of theirs. And then that's it. We think of it as more just a self-fulfillment thing. And like you were saying, Oz, it usually, a lot of times it is, but I don't know. I don't think it necessarily has to be dismissive that professional people don't write fan fiction. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and the thing is, a lot of I have one of a very specific kind of job, among other jobs that I have, where I read 2 or 3 books a month, and I write summaries on them and basic analysis and stuff like that. So from all the books I have read so far, and I have read something like 4, because it's a relatively recent commission job that I have, only one is actually literature. It's actually work that is worth the dead tree it is on. All the others are so generic. I have encountered them on fanfiction.net, which is where you find most of the fanfiction people want, out there and have comments for and stuff. I have read all of that. I have even read the phrases. That's how generic these quote-unquote professional books are. So it really comes down, it's a bit of a disillusionment, I have to say, in the sense that fan fiction actually should be separate from fiction only in the sense that you are using an IP that you do not own, period. Whether it's good or bad varies greatly, just as much as original fiction that is published and you get from a bookshop varies.
Yeah.
And that is something that we have to like internalize, because when you use fan fiction as a derogatory term, in essence, you are distorting, not you, I mean the general you are distorting the sheer range and the reality of creative writing, because it really comes down to creative writing. And yeah, I was going somewhere with that, but I stopped.
I don't know. I think it's fair enough to use to be derogatory if you are thinking of that section of fan fiction that is quite poor, because it's meant to be poor, because it's fine that it is.
Is it poor because it's fan fiction, or is it poor because the writers?
It's poor because it's poor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why couple it with the fan fiction tag though? It's just poor writing, and that's all it is.
Well, it's poor. It is poor because it's fan fiction, because it allows the specific freedoms that fan fiction allow, and there are very characteristic things, the over reliance on the shipping, and then and the format encourages you to do the self inserts, to do the Mary Sues, to do the mouthpiece characters. Well, it's the approach, encourages. Well, I'm just going to say that does encourage you to do that, because you are so invested in the world, and that's the reason why the creator is moved to do the work, because they can do that, because they read the story and they think, God, what if I was in this world? What my character was in this world? So they tend to put that in. So it's not just like a coincidence that some people are bad fan fiction writers. It is the format actually encourages that. So that is a huge part of fan fiction, is like that, because that is how it naturally turns out. There are a lot of good stuff, but we can't ignore the poor stuff. It has that reputation for a reason. It's not just people just didn't come out of that from nowhere. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I'm going to completely go against you on that one. For the reason there is okay, in the literary industry there are some cliches, and those cliches inform certain emerging forms of writing without actually evaluating them. For example, the idea of, like, this is now fading and fraying very much, and I think it will stop being a thing. But let's say 10, 20 years ago, self-publishing was synonymous to trash books, because the idea was that if you didn't pass through the test, let's say, of the screening process of the X and Y publishing house, it means that you were not good enough to have your story printed. Despite the evidence to the contrary, for many books that were later picked up by publishing houses because they were actually popular, or they were good enough and they were discovered, and so on and so forth. So the idea that just because you are taking the IP of someone else to create a story within it means that you are de facto most likely to be self-indulgent and do certain things with it that make it inferior to the original is a stereotype that is, let's say, erroneous, to use a legal term. And I'll give you an example on the counter, on the other side of the pond, for published original IP.
But that's mischaracterizing what I'm saying, Thomas. I'm not saying
Can I
all fan fiction. I'm saying there is a part.
This is the not all fan fiction argument. That's not what I'm talking about, though. That would also be a debating fallacy. I'm not talking about this. I'm trying to make a completely different point.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that you are wrong. I'm just saying that it needs a different perspective when we approach the written word as creative writing. That's all I'm saying. Okay, I'm not going against you personally or trying to tell you that you're wrong. I'm just trying to show a different perspective on these things. So the thing that I want to present as a suggestion, for example, is, and you might think I'm punching down, but I'm really not. Let's take Twilight, okay? And Twilight supposedly is original. It's an original setting with original concepts, and it has an original story. But I could very easily prove to you, if that was our point, that it is a fan fiction of Romeo and Juliet. And it is actually a very bad fan fiction of Romeo and Juliet because it has a gazillion self-inserts in it. And it is written in a way that is very self-indulgent to the author, but it just happens to be popular to certain demographics, okay? What I'm saying is that whether you have poor quality writing that is self-indulgent and it is in that derogatory fan fiction-y style, has everything to do with the author and what they are going for, and nothing to do with whether you are using someone's IP or not. So there is that. And what I was going to say is that age is a better indicator of whether you will have inferior fan fiction or not. Like when you have young kids or teenagers or people that are like just starting into writing stuff, or they are writing just for fun and not looking to create something that can stand as a literary work, whether it is fan fiction or not, then you will have inferior writing. If you have, on the other hand, someone that is more mature, then chances are you will get something that is worth reading. That's all I'm saying.
Yes. Well, what do you say, Pip?
I agree with Tench. Sorry.
I don't know. obviously, younger people tend to be more inexperienced and to create stuff that is falls into a lot more pitfalls. But I will say the idea that fan fiction has these bad parts in it just didn't come about from nowhere. Obviously, that there was something that created that perception. It is based on a solid fact.
Absolutely. I totally agree. But what I would say is where that reputation for being shoddy comes from is that, again, fan fiction, the way it tends to be published is on a platform that there's, being the internet, where there's not really so many safeguards in place there's not any safeguards in place to keep things that are subpar from being published. And seeing as how the majority of people out there who have access to this free outlet, free aside from what you pay for your internet bill every month, don't have writing experience. And that's where I think the reputation comes from. It's there's no system in place. There's no publishing house. There's no, and I want to say that I don't think having a publisher or an editor and stuff guarantees that you're going to have good work. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there are none of these things in place, and therefore when you have something that's such a free and open platform such as the internet, you're going to get a lot of subpar work. I'd say most of it would be subpar, and that's where a lot of that comes from. And I mean, I would agree that saying that maybe for what fan fiction is at its core, actually, I'd have to think about that before I say it, because I was about to agree with you. I was about to agree with you a little bit, but then when I really break it down, for me, it still just comes back to the person's level of experience and what they can do. So that's where I think fan fiction comes from, and where its reputation comes from.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same thing with when you have, take Twitter, for example. Twitter has the reputation of being a cesspool. And the big reason for this is that you have a lot of very young people that are inexperienced or not very well versed in debate or discussion or anything. And that shows. And then...
Or older people who aren't. I mean, it's the mental age.
Yeah. So it's really, and you get this reputation, although it's not the thing. It's not Twitter that is causing this issue. It's the fact that they are tweeting in 140 characters or something like that. It's the fact that you get a lot of people that don't have the ability to talk like civilized individuals. Or they feel that, or which is another element, they feel that they are not obliged to talk and discuss as civilized individuals because it's Twitter and because it's the internet. So the thing that I think we should keep with the whole fan fiction thing is that, yes, it is a medium. Just like any other medium, you get a lot of duds, but you also get a lot of good work. And it really depends on whether the creator, first of all, is interested in not creating a dud, and second of all, is versed enough or hones the work enough by feedback or whatever to make it better. Like, for example, in web comics, when I started, my work was terrible. Now it's just less terrible because I keep working at it and I keep trying to make my drawing more streamlined and and more, I don't know, quote unquote correct in what I'm trying to do. But that doesn't mean that web comics are inferior to print comics, as was their reputation for a very, very long time, up until DC and Marvel started looking and winking at web comics because they started making money, is what I'm saying.
Oh.
That's all.
Well, look, fan comics, well, not fan comics, but fan fiction has been around since fiction has been a thing. So it's not a new phenomenon. And many of our most famous writers started out writing fan fiction of their favorite stories. So, you know, Stephen King, people like that, you know, if you go back and look at their most original works, you know, you might find some very derivative kind of stuff because obviously they were driven to create because of, you know, the great stuff they saw being created. People like Isaac Asimov, who's one of the greatest sci-fi authors of the 20th century, started out imitating the great works that he'd read in Astounding whatever it was, you know, a Fantastic Story, you know, all those kind of pulp magazines that he really loved. So it's a fine thing to do. But I think now with, you know, the age of the internet, as Pete was saying, and the barrier is a bit lower, now your personal fan fiction work that might have been some sort of semi-embarrassing kind of document that you would have hidden away and no one would have seen is now something that you're encouraged to put online and share with people. And there are communities specifically existing just for that purpose. And not just for like good quality fan fiction. There are ones specifically devoted to shipping and all the different, you know, permutations of stuff you could think of. There's sexual subreddits and things,
which are like scary places for me. But would you say though that if there is a niche audience for this kind of thing, like terrible, smart, out of character writing where you just pair whomever with whomever and stuff happens that, you know, it's very wet. Would you say that this is actually bad fan fiction, or is it just giving people what they want at the quality that they want?
Well, it's both, isn't it? Because looked at objectively.
For me, it would be terrible. Just like for me, Twilight is terrible. It is virtually unreadable. And I can tell you that because I have now read it.
But say, looked at from the point of view of a good writer like you, Twilight is bad. Looked at from the point of view of someone who likes romantic vampires, it's fantastic.
Romantic vampires, there's nothing wrong with romantic vampires. There's wrong. This is a different story. This is a different discussion. But the thing is, what I'm saying is that Meyer has a very specific audience to which she writes and for which she writes. And they love it. They eat it up. It's a mystery to me, and I hate it, but they love it. So, can you say that her work is bad because she cannot write in a better way, or is she just giving them what they want and she keeps it trashy?
I would just say that it's both.
Okay.
I would say, I think Twilight started out as fan fiction of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I don't know. I've never seen her, so.
And Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey started out as fan fiction of Twilight, which is pretty well known.
what started as fan fiction of Twilight?
50 Shades of Grey.
Oh yeah, and not only that, now she has the shamelessness, in my opinion. Like Mayer came out with the whole story again from the point of view of the male vampire, of the vampire anyway. And now the 50 Shades of Grey woman came out with the book from the same story from the point of view of the psycho stalker guy. So she keeps lifting the whole thing shamelessly. So there's that. Is that fan fiction, even though it's a different IP?
No. Like, technically it was taken from, but she's not using the pre-existing characters, right? So it could be called a ripoff, but it's not fan fiction, right?
I think it started out that way, and then the characters were changed.
Exactly.
I think that's how that started. Yeah, it was either fan fiction of Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Anne Rice stuff. I'm not sure. Something like that.
Interview with the Vampire. That's right.
Interview with the Vampire, which I enjoyed, by the way. That was fun.
It was fun. And you could say, well, maybe Anne Rice started writing fan fiction of Dracula, and
yeah,
that's how she.
I was just thinking.
That's going full circle back to that. Everyone is writing fan fiction of everybody. Like, take for example all the fantasy, the high fantasy stuff. Is it all fan fiction from Tolkien, for example?
Some of it was. Obviously there's the term derivative. This is the thing.
It's
it's
a
different
way for saying we have lifted the formula, at least.
Yeah, but the good reason that people were being derivative of Tolkien was because that was a recognized success and it worked, and people wanted to jump on that gravy train. So it wasn't just people doing it out of enthusiasm that they want to create a fantasy world, and it was for passion. A lot of people, they were working writers, and that's what worked. That was the format you were meant to do. If you wanted to do fantasy, you did that.
And what about Tolkien himself? Did he write fan fiction of the lore of the Celts and Britain in general, depending on how you look at it?
Well, it's interesting because he wanted to create his own. He wanted to create a mythology for Britain that was like the mythology of.
He took the toys of the Celts. He took the elves. He took the dwarves, and all of that, and the dragons. He took those toys and he created something that he liked and he wanted to do better.
Well, those are actually from Norse mythology, the dwarves and the dragon. Those are pinched from there. The Celtic stuff is the fairies and sort of elves, but elves by name come from Norse mythology as well. So yeah, it's but he was what's that?
Sorry, go on. Oh no, you go on. I'm sorry.
Tolkien was a scholar of Scandinavian history, so that was where he got that stuff from. He could read, those stuff in the original language, I think. So, yeah, that was mainly, and he mixed it with the local English stuff.
Yeah, straight down to the ring and
all
that good stuff. But this is where we get onto a slippery slope. I mean, the concept of like having the ring of power and stuff like that, that is more kind of fan fiction-y because it's a specific element or entity. But with that other stuff we were talking about, by having these, different fantasy elements and perhaps like characters not characters, but races and stuff, we get more on a slippery slope of, is it fan fiction or is it expansion of a concept that already exists? And there's a difference because, but but one that really seeps into a gray area. There's no black and white difference. I don't think. If I thought about it more than 5 seconds, I might find one, but heads up for everybody, we don't research these topics beforehand. So when I sound like a blithering idiot, that's why. But basically, when we think of, again, the vampires, let's go back to that. You know, did everything come from Dracula? Did Dracula come from Vlad the Impaler? You know, or Camilla, which was before Dracula, which they're different in a lot of ways. But you know, if we're going to go back and say,
and
is
Varney
written off
before
the
that.
concept? Huh?
And Varney before Camilla.
Oh, what was that?
Varney the Vampire was super popular in the early, about 1850, I think. Before that, yeah, that was the prime vampire stories that people would buy at the Penny Dreadfuls. They'd buy it so they could ride the train and read it, and that was like hundreds of stories. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, so it's like, you know, when does something turn into fan fiction, which I guess is exactly what we were discussing. You know, Tanya, do you have World War II fan fiction? You know, are we going to go that far?
Oh, absolutely. The World War II fan fiction guy.
Have fan fiction of Oz. You would be. I don't know. I thought about it. Tank Girl. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's not, though.
Tank
It's expanding on a concept, kind of. But
it's fan fiction was
it's
1920 fan fiction.
it's a Ghost in the Shell fan fiction all the way.
There we go. There we go. Okay, you just tell. And I'm of course trying to jam it all into too tight of a box. It doesn't work the way I'm saying it. I guess what I'm trying to express is how do we qualify fan fiction? Can we qualify it outside of the this is professional and this isn't sort of thing? Or does it have to be literal? They took these characters who have the same names and are in the same world and transplanted them to that story, and only that can be fan fiction. Like how do we qualify it?
I think we can. I think we can say it's a spectrum that, you know, it's the gradations of difference.
I would say officially, the only thing that you can call fan fiction is the work that takes an established IP that belongs to someone else. It is the brainchild of someone else, and you play with it and you write your own stuff with it. That's fan fiction in a nutshell. All the other stuff that we have been discussing has the element. The stuff has the element of fan fiction in it, in the sense that you sort of creatively, quote unquote, steal from others, you know, that different ideas, different setups, different character designs, and so on and so forth. But you create something that is your original concoction. It's like
it's derivative.
You know, everyone. Yes, or in the sense that everyone is using flour and eggs and milk and butter, but the cakes that come out are different.
And
or the soup.
Well, the reality is that even though we like to think that things are original, everything is derivative of something else in some way, and that's just how it is. And people always say, "Oh, this isn't original." Well, you know, what is, for goodness sake? And if you look at a creator's magnum opus, and then you look back at their influences and who they've known in their time and the things they've read, you can piece together their influences pretty easily a lot of the time. So, you know, there's that. We all are influenced by someone else. Go on, Tons.
Absolutely. And not only that, if you see a lot of their lives, they inform the way they write and what they write about, and especially the format in which they write. Like, for example, what am I thinking of? Yeah, like if you take Edgar Allan Poe, and sorry for the Greek pronunciation of his name. He had very specific life experiences that inform the very uncanny way in which he writes. And if you read about his life and all the experiences that he has had, you can see which of the works that he has written are actually thinly veiled episodes of his life that he has, dressed up in the occult and in ways like this, and which ones are his own explorations of his fears, of what things might happen or what happens after or about death, and so on and so forth. So absolutely, we all are informed and inspired and take things.
So would you say he wrote fan fiction of his own life?
Yes, basically.
One of the other,
especially, I'll finish just. One of the biggest fan fictions of his life is The Cask of Amontillado, and look this up, guys. Thank you. You're welcome.
One of the other things, though, is when we say, like, for the Star Wars example, it's that it looks like it is created by, someone doing fan fiction. In that, what we're referring to there are the excesses of, the inexperienced writer, and the over-enthusiastic fan, the fan who is very obsessed by the particular things that they enjoy about the work to the exclusion of the things that actually make the work. That kind of stuff. And that is why we can level that criticism at some things. Like, say, Doctor Who. A lot of people like the new version of Doctor Who, but, for some of us who were fans of the original work, it seems very fan fiction-y because and it really was too, because the guy who went on to head up the whole thing and recreate Doctor Who did so because he was a super fan of the original, but he was a super fan of certain aspects, and that was what he went on to to produce. He sort of expanded upon those things that he really liked and his own idea of the world and recreated it in his image. So this is an interesting thing, though. This is where, we've said, like, the idea of fan fiction is something that's non-professional and is created a certain way because it doesn't have that oversight, and we can put it out ourselves. Whereas this, like, takes it in another way, in that these people who are fans become the official creators, and they're creating something that is essentially fan fiction, which turns the whole sort of thing on its head. No longer is this someone's secret writing. This is official.
Take, for example, The Crystal Cave by Mary. Oh, I forget. Mary. Anyway, I can't remember her. She has written a series about Merlin, and it's from Merlin's point of view. He also narrates this here in first person limited, and Merlin is the one that talks about the entire Arthurian story, and it's one of the best, in my opinion, works within the Arthurian legend setting. You could easily say that this is fan fiction of the Arthurian legends, because it's a reinterpretation. Mary Stuart, that's her name. That Mary Stuart has done of these characters, and still it is one of the most original works I have read within the particular in the particular category, let's say, Arthurian fiction, in a sense. So, is it fan fiction, or is it because it is so awesome and it got published as hers? Is it original?
Yeah, there's with the professional works, we don't tend to say it's fan fiction. I think it's only when it's has those aspects of being wish fulfillment that it tends to attract that particular accusation.
Yeah.
And well, it is what it is. It's, there's the term Mary Sue that a lot of people have actually, come back as, this has been like a reaction against that, saying, oh no, like Mary Sue isn't a bad thing. It's blah, 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 blah. And you think, well, fuck, well, what can I say is a bad thing if, you bloody reclassifying everything and justifying everything in a different way. It's, when people are doing, wish fulfillment characters and characters that aren't affected by whatever drama and stuff like this and experts at everything, is this suddenly a good thing now? This
No, it's not. I don't know who is trying. I have never heard of anyone trying to defend the Mary Sue. Just defend the character as not being one. Because the biggest issue for the Mary Sue is that it is a character that cannot be developed. That's a problem. And that when you have characters that cannot be developed, you have a story where a big element of the progression of the story and how stories work is defunct. It lacks. It's not there for you to exploit anymore. So because the Mary Sue is so perfect in everything that there is nothing for the Mary Sue to learn, nothing for the Mary Sue to have to work, fail, work again, and then succeed in order to get to what she wants, or he, because there are male Mary Sues as well. And that's the problem with the Mary Sue.
There's
it's not
more
that,
male ones than female ones.
It's the it's the fact that what can you do with something? It's like in the periodical table, gold is boring because gold reacts with nothing, and there's nothing you can do with gold. Well, there are things you can do with gold. What I'm saying is that all the other elements that have the capacity to react more easily with other elements bring about more variations and bring about more development, in new compounds and stuff like that. I'm not a chemist, but I'm starting to study for chemistry because it's going to be relevant in Without Moonlight very soon. But that's what
it's why oxygen and carbon are the big stars of the world, because they do everything. God just sits there being a smartass.
In a sense, are they Mary Sue's though? Because everyone wants to bind with them, like everyone.
Well, they're not Mary Sue's. I think Gold would be the Mary Sue because Gold is perfect and doesn't.
You can combine them and change them in many ways.
Exactly, they're affected by things. They're the basis of organic chemistry, and that is the basis of life. Gold's just an asshole.
And causes problems everywhere, even in the economy.
Exactly. Damn Mary Sue elements. I don't like the way that people would say Marty Stew. Like the male, it's just... What? That's so... Yeah, or Gary Stew, yeah. There's a whole different range. I mean, just... You don't need a male version of it.
It's all the same.
Yeah, it's just... You only need one term for it, Yeah. If your Rambo character is super masculine and has got a beard, he can still be a Mary Sue,
Yeah. Or just name him Marius.
Marius.
Oh, one of the most underrated characters in Les Mis, Marius. Always gets the short end of the stick in terms of actors. Like, they are all weird and not very alluring for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, they should have made him a Marius Stew then. Marius Stew, I don't know. Oh, goodness me. Anyway, perhaps we should wrap this up now. It's been an interesting and wide-ranging discussion on the topic of fan fiction, which isn't a bad thing. You know, I'll reiterate my point. If you want to do the shipping and like stick your Mary Sue in and your mouthpiece characters, go for it. I don't think that's just an aspect of being a young writer. I think that's, you have the freedom to do it, so do it. And if that's what makes it an enjoyable process for you, then, go hog wild.
Yeah, and do it of our comics, please, because we're all very thirsty for fan fiction.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay. All right. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.